Hand lines, installation of hand lines. We've buzzed over this pretty good when we talked about hand lines. I want to hit a few high points. Handling pipe. Again, you have a very delicate piece of material, aluminum tube, only 5/100ths of an inch thick, dense, extremely easy. So we want to make sure that we handle that with kids' gloves. You can't be dropping it, you can't be banging it into things, you can't be hitting the ends of it because it rolls the ends so they don't work right. Couplers, a couple of ways to install couplers. We talked about the kind that press in and the type that bolt on. Well, in both cases they have to be done correctly. The bolt-on style couplers have to seat in the right position. The press-in couplers have to be pressed in the right depth, and they have to stay square when the press is pressing them in. And those of you that ever get the opportunity to run a pipe press, you'll find out that you have to make sure that the grip on the press really holds the pipe so the pipe can't slide as you're pressing the coupler in, because it really makes a mess out of the pipe when you don't have the correct sized grips on the pipe. And then the band and latches have to be adjusted the right length. And there's a couple of ways you adjust the band and latches. One of them is so that you can release the coupler from a distance. So you can grab the pipe in the middle, push it, and there's enough play left in the band and latch to pop it up. That's if you're using it as a hand line. If you're using a hand line as a solid set pipe, then you move the band and latch down the tube a couple of more inches so that it locks in and you can't release it. And the reason for that is so that it won't allow itself to be released in the process of day-to-day operations. You want it to stay in place. It's not going to move. You don't want it to move at all and ever have a chance of dropping out of its latch, because you're going to be turning it on and off in the same exact place. And also there's expansion and contraction due to the heating and cooling of the day, and you want to make sure that that coupler stays latched in, so you shorten up the length that it has, that it can stroke into the coupler fitting itself so that it can't work its way out. You just tighten it down to where it can't work its way out. Wheel lines. Aluminum pipe again. You got to be careful about handling that. We've talked about that a couple of times already. Couplers. Exact same thing takes place, except now we have to make sure we use the press bands to press on the outside of the pipe to give us added strength on those joints, because realizing the pipe is the axle and it's turning, we have to have an extremely strong bond between the press-in coupler and the aluminum tube. And also we use a lubricant glue combination material to put on the coupler to swedge it on to the pipe, so that it has a lubrication to slide it in, and also that it will seal it once it is slid in and actually help adhere it to the pipe. Same thing with the handline coupler that we swedge on. Interestingly, when aluminum tube gets older, it's very hard to press. It becomes more brittle, and instead of swedging open, as it ages it'll start to split. So if you have older aluminum tube, you may not be able to press couplers into it. It'll just split on you instead of swedge. It loses its elasticity. Head levelers. Head levelers aren't necessarily always used right up by the movers, but most people use them half the way from the mover to the end of the line at least, so that those heads are always standing straight up and down. You don't always need to put them on next to the mover, because those few heads out from the mover, they're going to be perfectly aligned every time you run the mover. It's the ones out toward the ends that will get kind of out of whack, and that's where you might need to make sure you have head levelers. The first 4, 5, 6 heads on either side of the mover, you'll make sure they're straight up and down every time you roll the unit. So there is a need sometimes to save yourself some money by not putting head levelers on every joint and every outlet. You just need to do them on the ends oftentimes.